So my next question, and I want to do the same to go all to all four of you, is if it's in fact true that the forms are merging and the media are merging, that is the ways, the means by which we do journalism are merging, and the boundaries that used to be fairly clear between types of journalism and genres and then modes. So there's newspaper journalism that used to be very clearly separate from long-form nonfiction, for instance. People are moving in and out of these forms. Is that a problem in any way? We know it's something to celebrate, but doesn't that cause a bunch of confusion? So that's a tough question, but Anthony's really good at answering tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally find that to be too much of a problem. I think there are other problems. You know, the din, I think, is going to be pretty loud, and discerning valuable and trusted voices is going to be difficult, although it's kind of always been difficult. And I remember one time I went to cover a concert for Nelson Mandela in London for Rolling Stone, and it became essentially the right-wing members of parliament were trying to stop this show. It became a news story. Also, you know, it's Rolling Stone. It was a concert. And there's finally something to be said about, you know, the involvement about rock music in political change. So what I ended up writing was a combination of a news story, a critical essay, and a kind of socio-political essay. And I remember my girlfriend, who at the time had a kind of straight journalism background, and she was like, well, what is this piece? Is this a review, or is this a news story? Is this, an essay? Well, I said, well, in Rolling Stone you can do all of those things, and I think that kind of in one piece, and I think all of those, I think that's going to be increasingly true of the variety of forms that we're talking about that are taking shape.
Okay, Paul, your thoughts on this?
Well, we're all sounding very, very positive here, and I want to keep that note up for the moment. We'll probably register some negative notes as we go along, but yeah, I think breaking these molds is, by definition, energetic. And it's precarious because you're standing on a sandbar and it shifts by the time you wake up in the morning, and it seems quite different. But as long as you keep spying in on yourself, I think, and wondering about, am I doing this authentically? Am I being true to the facts as I can discern them, true to the truth as I can find it? Those things, those fundamental verities are not going to change. And I think, just one more point, if things are shifting in and out, there's still the hunger to have an arc, to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, something that has a sense of completeness, which is why I go back to the positive note that I think, long or short, we want to read something that has some sense of taking us from here to there, so that rainbow hunter's arc.
Before I go to Dick and Avery, I want to invite someone who's trepidatious or negative about the future of journalism. You don't have to, you can pretend to be. Or if, like I'm just looking at some journalists here who are nodding. Yes, there's reasons to be trepidatious. So I would invite Connie to express some of the trepidations, and then let's see if they can respond to that.
No, I was just telling my husband that I don't think that's good, the blurring of the lines, because people are searching for straight information, but they know they can go to Rolling Stone for that, part essay, part you can opine or whatever. In other words, they know the nature of a publication, and by virtue of the publication, you'll know if you're getting it straight or you're getting some internal thoughts of either the author, the editor, or whatever.
But that doesn't mean that Rolling Stone can't go and break stories. They do it all the time.
Well, absolutely. No, but I mean, I think that it needs to be clear, and it is clear to the viewer or the reader. What is occurring now is that we have crossed the line greatly into opinion. And that troubles me tremendously.
I want to invite Dick and Avery to respond directly to that if you want, in any way, either
well,
affirm or deny.
That's a concern I have. I mean, what we're talking about is the Brave New World is potentially great, but one of the problems that I see, and as a matter of fact, my wife and I talk about this all the time, when we want to put on the news on TV at night, you know, if you want, so you put on, say, CNN at a given hour, and you just want the straight information. You can't get it now because it's all spin, it's all tood, and so now we've got
It's all tood.
Tood.
I mean,
I'm trying to get it relevant. And
People
hip
can
with
have
everybody here.
people can have an attitude about facts.
But well, and I think what we're doing now is we're trying to watch the 6:30 NBC nightly news, for example, so we can get at least some kind of straight. Sensibly straight. So here's one of the problems. We're getting there's a lot more commentary now. There's a lot more opinion. It's easier to do commentary. It's easier to do opinion. Reporting costs more, essentially, also. And I think this is one of the things. This is one of the challenges. We should talk a little bit about newspapers tonight. We say, well, newspapers, are they dying, or do they have any role anymore? Well, here's where they do have a role. We say, all right, newspapers don't have a monopoly anymore on news. Here's where they do have a near monopoly, is on reporting. You know, paying reporters to go out and get information that people didn't know, sort of, you know, the straight stuff. This is what, most of that is what is done at newspapers and reporting. And so the challenge, I think, as we get into more of the blogosphere, for example, where it's so much of it is all attitude and spin and commentary, is to try to build business models online where you're going to be able to support original reporting.
That phrase has now been used, and therefore it has entered into evidence. Business models online. How many of you are going to pay to get past the paywall at the New York Times?
20
will pay. Jamie Lee will not, but a lot of people in this room will. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And Avery, your comment on any of this?
Well, I agree with Connie. I do think that as we blur the lines, it's very important to recognize solid reporting when you see it, to be able to discern holes in somebody's logic or intellectual fallacies that you know you are all studying and now properly discerning of, because there are a lot of slippery slope analogies and ridiculous things out there that people are peddling as truth. I think Dick's right that in newspapers, people work very hard to present a case based on the facts, even when it's narrative reporting. Even if you don't have, I got this here, I got this there, there should be a box on the side that said, we interviewed everybody involved in this story 5 times, and they said this, that, and the other. People should know where information comes from, and if it is not stated, you as good consumers of the news should be looking for it and see when it is not declared.
If I may, I just want to interject a point. I think there's a problem with the metaphor of blurring the lines. I think keeping the lines clear is very important, and not to get like too cultural studies about it, but I think there's always an
he has a
ideology
PhD.
at work, you know, and that, you know, what, you know, seeming objectivity, you know, is often just a kind of voice of power. You know, I think, you know, there's the great Paul Krugman line, you know, at the height of the Iraq War, is, you know, in his frustration, just kind of said, you know, when the president gets up and talks, you know, the most you're going to get, you know, from the mainstream media is, you know, president declares world is flat, others disagree. You know, and it's just finally, you know, that's just not enough, I think.
Can I just add one point very, very quickly? Yeah, it's a running argument in the New York Times with the ombudsman, and that these attitudes and opinions are slipping into the news columns and on the front page. The gray lady of the New York Times stopped being that about 20 years ago. Well, 40 years ago, the Washington Post stopped being that. I know something about that. I worked there for a long time. I think it is a canard that we can be totally objective, but I really, Connie, am wishing to argue it both ways. I think that your point is very well taken, that the blurring, the slippery slope is a scary proposition. I think it infuses a lot of energy, but you got to be careful, which is why I went back to say you have to sort of constantly spy in on yourself and ask what you're doing and if you're doing it authentically and correctly and morally, ethically at least.